Hello everyone, today we're going to go and check out how to connect to Azure with PowerShell from your computer. Once we're connected into Azure, we're going to go and check out some of the essential commands that you're going to need to administer your Azure environment. So let's get straight into it now with connecting to Azure with PowerShell. So first of all, I'm on Windows 11, so I'm going to just launch Terminal here and check my PowerShell version that I have installed. If we run this command $ps version table on our computer, we can see that I have PowerShell version 5.1 installed. I actually want to get the latest version, PowerShell version 7, downloaded. So if I search for PowerShell on the internet, you'll see the first link over here is installing PowerShell. There's a number of different ways of doing this. The easiest though is to select an MSI package, download the 64-bit MSI package, and install it from there. So if we open that up, we can just do a next install. There's not much to tick here apart from maybe select the open context menu in Explorer, so that makes running your PowerShell scripts easier in the future, so you can right click on them. PowerShell 7 won't require a reboot, so it will take a couple of minutes to install and then we can carry on. Now that's installed, we can go and check that PowerShell is working correctly by launching Windows Terminal again. Now we can use this drop-down menu at the top and we can see that we can select PowerShell version 7. And we're running on PowerShell version 7.4.4, ready to install our Azure modules. So we need to download the Azure modules here. If we do install-module-az, this will download all of the Azure PowerShell modules available to us on the internet. There's a lot of them. If you do this install-module on its own like this, you'll notice your terminal will lock up. There's not much you can do about this, because what it's doing in the background is checking and downloading quite a lot of different PowerShell modules. If you want to actually see these PowerShell modules downloading, and I recommend you do, you've got to put an extra switch on the end of this command. That extra switch is the -verbose switch. So if we cancel off that command and rerun the command again with -verbose at the end of it, what you'll see is the complete output of the command, and it's going out to the PowerShell gallery on the internet, is checking all of the AZ modules and pulling them all down. Once that's completed, we can run the command Connect-AzAccount. What this will do is it will give us a pop-up box where we can sign into Azure. So we can sign in with any of our Azure admin credentials here. My default one is Mike Admin on my environment, and I can actually sign in with that now. At this point, you may also need to do MFA or multi-factor authentication if that's set up on your environment. What it will also ask you, just like if you sign into Teams, it will ask you if you want to sign into all of your applications or just this single application. I only want to sign in to Azure at the moment, so we'll just do no, we're signing into just this application. I have 2 subscriptions on my environment, and the first thing it asks you to do is select a subscription. And this is a subscription that we will use to deploy to, and we will be able to list things from. So I'm just going to select my first subscription down here, my Visual Studio Dev Essentials subscription. Now let's get into some Azure PowerShell commands. If we run Get-AzResourceGroup, this will list out all of our resource groups inside Azure. It'll list out in this strange looking table that can be quite hard to read if you've got a lot of resource groups. So if we were to put a pipe on the end of this and change this to a format list, and we'll change this to a format table. And we will now see all of our resource groups listed out from PowerShell with Get-AzResourceGroup format table with the appropriate tags and the location and the name of that resource group. We could also do New-AzResourceGroup here if we wanted to create a new resource group, and we could just give it a name. You'll also need to provide a location for that resource group like UK South, and we can very easily create one there called temp. The next command I want to look at is New-AzVM, because you will be creating a lot of virtual machines in your Azure environment, or most people will, and this is a very easy way of creating virtual machines. So with New-AzVM, there are a few main parameters. There are more parameters than this if you look in the documentation. So we've got one that's just called New-AzVM with resource group name, and the name of the virtual machine of my VM, the location of East US, and we're going to use the Ubuntu image here to actually deploy out a virtual machine. Again, we want to put the -verbose switch on the end of this command so we can actually see it working. Otherwise, the command prompt will actually freeze up, or the PowerShell prompt will actually freeze up when it's deploying. Since no size has been provided, it chose a default size for me, and these are all the settings that it's going to use to create that resource. So New-AzVM, this creates a basic virtual machine inside your environment and inside a resource group that you have selected. If we run Get-AzVM, we can see all the Azure virtual machines that are running in our Azure environment. The next command I want to have a look at is Get-AzContext. By running Get-AzContext, we can actually see which subscription we are currently connected to in our environment. Now, we might want to change this subscription as well if we have multiple subscriptions in our environment to be able to see the resources in the other subscriptions. So if we also run Get-AzSubscription, we will be able to see all of the subscriptions that are available to us within our tenant. We need the subscription ID. So to do that, we're just going to run Get-AzSubscription again with a .id on the end of it inside some brackets. This will extract just that ID parameter from this list of subscriptions. What we can do with this ID number now is just load this into a variable called $sub_ID. And we're going to use that $sub_ID inside another command to actually go and change the context that we're in, i.e. we're going to go and move to a different subscription. You can see that that is actually a string, and we're now going to add that $sub_ID to the command set-azcontext-subscription. And we'll see we have changed to the second subscription we have inside our tenant. Now, something interesting here, if we run Get-AzLocation, this will actually pull out all of the regions that are available to us. But by running Get-AzLocation with -format list, and let's select a couple of other options down here, some location and some display name, we can also grab longitude and latitude here. And we can see exactly with GPS coordinates where these are on a world map. Now, what we might want to do is organize this a little better, so we'll change this from format list to format table. And also what I need to do is correct a little spelling mistake there, because I'm not actually getting out my longitude, because that's not how you spell longitude. So correcting that, we've now got a list of all of the Azure data center regions in the world and the appropriate GPS coordinates. If you're wondering why some of the regions appear to not have any GPS coordinates, that's because those are region groupings. So if you've got things like, for example, India, there's multiple inside India, there's multiple inside France. But for the individual data centers themselves that have physical locations that are not just groups, you can see the longitude and latitude of those, and you can go and look them up on Google Maps if you really want to. Final command I want to run down here is just Get-AzTenant, and this is going to give my Azure tenant ID and my Azure tenant categories and all the information about my tenant. So we can see the domains that are attached to it, we can see the tenant ID, and we can actually still see that if you run Get-AzTenant, the tenant type is AAD, Azure Active Directory. Microsoft still haven't updated everything from Entra ID. So I hope you enjoyed this demo on some quick PowerShell commands and how to actually connect to Azure with PowerShell. I'll see you next time for more PowerShell and Azure. And you know the routine, hashtag like and subscribe, and I hope you enjoyed this video and will join me next time. Goodbye.